Hi, this is Evan at the Conservation Lab at the Biblioteca Ludwig van Mises at the University of Francisco Marroquín. And what we'll be doing today is some basic paper repair for books. We'll start with pages that have come out and continue through rips, and then finally repair a softcover book in a simple way. PVA in a brush, a small iron, Teflon bone folder, a straight edge along with a scalpel, paper knife or micro spatula, and then scissors, then blotter, some release paper, filmoplast or a heat set adhesive, Japanese paper or long fibered tissue, some newsprint or craft paper, some Rime or Hollytex, and finally 2 boards and a light weight. The first thing we'll do is take a book that has a page that came out. And so we have one here that popped out. And so this is a pretty common problem, especially for paperback books. And when you have a page out, many times, you're not sure how to put it back in, if they're there at all. If you don't have them at all, what you should try to do is get a copy from another library or another institution, or if it's online, print it out, make it the same size, and then prepare it so that it can be put back into the book. But the repair for this is it sounds simple, and in theory, it is, but it's surprisingly difficult. All you're going to do is take some PVA glue, dab it upon the edge of the spine here, just a little bead, and then you're going to put it in. You're just going to kind of just jam it in there, basically. The problem when you do this, though, is no matter how hard you try, oftentimes your page, after you finish, will still stick out. This is an exaggeration, but it'll still stick out somewhat. Definitely not as much as that, but it'll still stick out something like that. So you can tell where the repair was, and that's not ideal. It won't affect the book structurally too much, but it has a chance to come out easier next time also, if it's like that. So you just want to make sure that you put it in as deep as you can, and with experience you can get it in there pretty well. A lot of times people use a brush. I think this brush is way too big for this. So if you were going to use a brush, you'd like a brush that's very thin, very small. What I'm going to do is use actually just my pinky, and that's pretty common too. You could also use something like a micro spatula would be fine, but like I said, a thin brush, or a lot of people use their pinky too. So I'm just going to put a dab, just a bead all along, and I'm putting very little amount, just along actually the edge of the paper. That's all I want, and that's way too much. But I just want just on the edge of the paper, just enough to get it to stick in there, and I use my pinky. I'm using straight PVA. Now you don't want too much glue, obviously, because if there's too much, your page is going to be hard to read because it won't open as well if it's sticking to its neighboring pages. If you use a brush, you could brush on the adhesive, knowing that it's a little heavy, but then dab some off. That's a pretty good way to do it too. But I'm almost there. And that's kind of even. That's pretty even. I can run my finger across it. And I can feel the tack when I do this. Feel the tack of the glue. So I did get some glue on the other side, a little more than I'd liked. So I'm going to take some craft paper and dab some off. And that's the excess glue that I took off there. So I'm going to put this in where it should go. Wipe off my hands first on my towel and put it in. Lining it up at the head and tail can also be difficult. And what I'm going to do is just close it. That was page 500, 501. Just going to close it. And I can set that aside for a while, let it dry. I do think using Rime and blotters is a good idea here. I'm going to put them in, maybe a little too late again. So here we go. Yeah, I should have put it in sooner, but it'll work. So you can see already the page is gonna stick, and it's gonna stay in there, which is what we want. And so that's the repair you're gonna do. It's very simple, but again, the problem is the first times you do it, you will have pages that you can tell where you fixed it. So that's the first one for a page. That's the first repair for a page that's come out. Next, we're gonna do some tears, fix some tears. And we'll use that with heat set tissue. We're using, in this case, filmoplast R and a small iron, which is to my right. And we have some cuts here that we can fix. Actually, the same book, page 125. And what we have here is this tear right here. So what we'll do actually is a filmoplast R repair, heat set tissue, but if you look closely at the tear, you'll see that there's what's called a scarf, which is where the tears overlap, where one edge is overlapping on the other. It's difficult to see because, especially in white paper, it all very much looks the same. But I can tell from looking at this that there is an overlap. The letters, I can see the letters on the other side of the page, so that's an overlap. And for high quality repair, instead of using a heat set tissue or heat set adhesive, I'm just going to use PVA glue and just get it in those scarves, because it'll be not less invasive, but it'll be less obvious than a filmoplast adhesive. Filmoplast or other heat set adhesives, you will be able to see them later, so don't expect that your repair is going to be invisible, but they're so useful, especially in large collections when you have a lot of paper repairs and paper damages, that a lot of times it's just in your best interest to understand when to use it and how to use it. So I'm going to start with the heat set repair and then do the scarves at the end. So the way I want to do that is I had some filmoplast just cut into little strips, but I want to make these strips a little smaller. These strips are still a little too long, still a little too big, and I can do better than that. This is too bulky a repair. But basically there's adhesive on one side of this tissue. And with heat, the adhesive activates, and then it'll grasp, it'll adhere the two pages together. So it's basically like tape. It's just a little more archival, a little more neutral, and the adhesive won't run as quickly as tape will run. So the way to do this is I want to make sure I have my iron ready, and I have my iron pretty hot. Many people will recommend to have a moderately hot iron, but I tend to prefer one that's a little hotter, and maybe I'll use a thick or a moderately thick piece of paper as an intermediary between the iron and what I'm fixing to offset some of that extra heat. So what I'll do is put down a piece of release paper under it. Silicone release is fine, or we have some that was off a roll of Mylar, which is an easy alternative also. So I'm going to put that under. So when I use the iron to adhere the two pieces together, none of the adhesive will go through to the page under it. Next, I want to actually cut my piece of filmoplast a little more to size. I can make, like I said, my repair a little more closely tied to what the tear actually is. So I'm going to actually make mine into small strips and do a number of small strips. So I have the filmoplast, and I'm going to use my blade instead of scissors. Now I want to make these wide enough to cover the tear, but not too wide so that they obstruct anything on the page. And if they're too small and they don't cover the tear, I mean it's a useless repair. So I'm going to use these to start from, and I'm going to plan where I'm going to put the strips. I'm going to do one strip across the front, like so. I'm going to do where there's a curve in the tear. I'm going to use a different strip, so you'll be able to see here. I'm going to use the iron and actually just set this down and go piece by piece down across this tear. And I need an intermediary, like I said, so the iron won't force the adhesive onto the neighboring page and won't dirty up the page. So I need to put this down. It makes it a little harder because you're not actually able to see where, if your strip has moved or anything like that when you've done it. But now I'm just going to iron it over. And it's set. So the adhesive was activated. I'm going to clip it right there. So that's the first Band-Aid. You can see, I didn't mention it, but you can see how right here I went over the page. And that's fine. That actually makes it easier to cut your repair flush with the page after. So I'm going to cut that directly off in a minute. So now, following the curve, I'm going to put this section down next. I also like a hot iron because I don't have too much time. It doesn't take too much time to activate the adhesive. I'm just going to continue this all the way down. And I know I mentioned scarf tears, but this tear won't even need it to be done. But if you do have tears where there's an overlap of your papers, just put a little PVA in the overlap. Set it down in between remay and blotter and a light weight for about 10 minutes, and then it would. That's a great repair. Easy, simple, and effective. And you need by far less materials than an iron and heat set tissue. So if it's a scarf tear, try and fix that first. So, like I said, I'm just going to continue on down. You can cut your strips beforehand to size, but I like using the entire strip and then cutting off where I need to. And I'm just at the final part of the tear. So okay, so I have that. I'm going to cut off this bit right now, that overhanging bit, but I need to cut on something that will protect my text block. So I'm going to put some light board under there. I'm going to take a blade and making sure not to go into the text. Just going to slice. For the best repair, you want to do both sides. So I'm going to just turn it around, and since this is a small end of the book, I'm going to stack it up like this, just so it doesn't harm the book when I keep it like this. That's great. I mean, you can see this repair, but this book is certainly usable again, and it has a drastically reduced chance of getting torn off that bit. So, if you have the opportunity, invest in a tacking iron and some heat set tissue, because it's certainly worth it. So what I'm doing is reinforcing the repair that I did on the other side in the same manner. And I'm not putting too much pressure down on the iron. It's very hard to see the tear on this end, which is good, but and this should be my last strip. Now I'm going to cut off the overhanging bit at the head. And that's the repair. You can do this repair for any type of book, brittle paper, great paper, but like I said, you will be able to see it. This is not an invisible repair. So be sure that it's in your collection and your institution's best interest to that it's okay, and that the use of your book is going to be more important than the aesthetic value of it. So keep that in mind. But other than that, it's, in my opinion, a very useful and almost necessary tool to have. So moving on, we're going to do a mix of a Japanese paper repair and a heat set tissue repair. This is for a softcover book where we're going to use, where there's been some loss. And so we're going to fill it in by simply just putting together, using a layer of Japanese tissue and then putting another layer of filmoplast just to kind of reinforce where we inserted the tissue. So this is the cover. This is the cover of the book that we're going to fix, in particular this edge down here. You can see there's a little bit of loss. So what we're going to do is put some Japanese tissue with PVA, and we're going to put it there oversized, which I'll do now. And again, if the book, if the page that you're going to repair is near the front or near the back, it's going to be hard to work on it unless you stand it up like I'm doing now. So I'm about to put this on. But it seems like this Japanese paper is much too thin and is going to be floppy when it hangs out on its own. So if you have a heavier weight Japanese paper, you should use that. And we do here in the preservation lab. So this is much heavier weight tissue, long fibered paper, and it just feels better. And when people use it, it's not going to flop up and down. It's just going to be fine. So it's still got the fuzzy edges, and I'm going to put it on in the same way. So I'm gluing just about 5 millimeters or half a centimeter or so onto the tissue, and I'm going to overlap that section onto the paper. And I'm going to bone this down with my bone folder. Pretty strongly, actually, so I'm putting a bit of weight down on it. And this will happen too. The edges will stick a little bit, so make sure you have your micro spatula around or a paper knife, and you'll be able to lift that with no problem. And that should be fine. So this is going to be the core of our repair here, and really give it the strength and weight so that it feels like and looks like a continuation of our original cover, and act like our original cover. The next step is going to be to reinforce the repair on this side with some more heat set tissue. And I'm going to take another strip of tissue. And my tear is pretty straight here, so I might just use one strip continuously, probably two. And I'm going to put the release paper under, the repair paper over, and some craft paper as to interleave And that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to do the bottom half here. Just going to put it down like there temporarily, put it down where I want it temporarily, take the craft paper, put it over, and then holding everything down, put the iron on. Cut, put this down on the little overhanging bit. So you have a reinforced repair here of similar weight on the cover. All it needs now is just to be trimmed so that it doesn't overhang the text block. So what I'm going to do is line it up here, put this down, take my straight edge, follow the foredge. In this case, the foredge is actually the foredge of the cover is actually a little smaller than the foredge of the text, but I want to continue what is on the cover, or else it just would look weird. It might pull. So this is going to be better. And the same thing at the tail. And that's that. I'm just going to round this corner just a tiny bit, so it's not as sharp. And that's the cover. So what we went through today was a few things. First was putting back in a page that came out of your book, and it's really just as simple as using as small a bit of PVA or glue as you can and putting it back in. Then we went through a paper repair using heat set tissue and an iron, and also finally infilling losses on your cover.